Dances with Wolves, 12 nominations.
I command this family, right or wrong. It was not what I wanted!
The Godfather, Part 3, 7 nominations.
You bring your...
Dick Tracy, 7 nominations. Those are the top vote-getters in the 63rd annual Oscar nomination list announced earlier this week. And on this special edition of Siskel and Ebert, we're going to be looking at the surprises of inclusion and exclusion on this year's list. The big story this year, Money Talks, films popular with the public, also scored well with the 5,000-member Motion Picture Academy. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Of all the Oscar prizes this year, the biggest one for me was that a routine romantic comedy like Ghost was nominated for Best Picture over such candidates as Avalon, The Grifters, and Reversal of Fortune, films that I thought were a lot better. Hollywood usually doesn't nominate a movie just because it's big box office, but they did this time unless the voters really did think this was a great film. The other Best Picture nominees were Awakenings, Dances with Wolves, The Godfather Part 3, and Goodfellas. That's pretty good company for Ghost.
Molly, you're in danger.
Now, you can't just blurt it out like that and quit moving around, will you? Because it's starting to make me dizzy. I'll just tell her in my own way. Molly, you in danger, girl.
And that was Whoopi Goldberg there as the psychic who contacts Demi Moore's dead husband. I was also sort of surprised that Goldberg was nominated for this performance in the supporting actress category, since she did an incomparably better job last year in a much more important role in The Long Walk Home, a movie that still hasn't opened in most of the country. Whether or not she was supporting or lead in that movie is a toss-up. As for Ghost being voted as Best Picture, it's a nomination that I think cheapens this category.
Well, let me stick up for Ghost. I agree that the other pictures you named, like Grifters and Reversal of Fortune, those would have been much better choices. But Ghost, I think, is more than just a middling romantic comedy. I like the picture, and I wouldn't call it a comedy. I think it's a drama, number one, and I think that it is a film that talks about, obviously, something that a lot of people care deeply about, and that is the hold out the promise that when somebody's gone, you can still have some contact with them.
Well, that's something have been a sucker for 15 years for any movies that take place in the afterlife. You like all those movies that are set in heaven. You like most of, but let me ask you this.
Yes.
Weren't you surprised that it was nominated as Best Picture? It is a surprise.
Absolutely,
yes.
And that's what the show is about. I'm just saying that you seem to be trashing the picture, I think, too much.
I like some of the stuff that was in it. I like the performances, for example, but I just don't think it's a Best Picture.
I don't either. The big surprise for me was that Reversal of Fortune was left off the Best Picture list. In addition to it being a superb film, it scored so well in many other big categories: acting, director, screenplay, telling the story of two very different men, the elegant Klaus von Bülow, accused of attempting to murder his heiress wife, and the scruffy Alan Dershowitz, the brilliant lawyer who defends him.
You know, it's very hard to trust someone you don't understand. You're a very strange man.
You have no idea. Why no Best Picture nomination for Reversal of Fortune? I think it's because the film was unfairly perceived as vaguely distasteful. An alleged criminal gets off scot-free. The other big surprise, Awakenings, receiving only 3 nominations overall, including its director Penny Marshall being ignored. I wasn't a big fan of the film, but it seemed like a movie designed almost by computer to win Oscars. So earnest, so noble, so full of suffering, and so full of joy.
Well, I was a big fan of the film. I picked it as one of my year's 10 best, and I was also surprised, and I wonder why the Academy didn't take this opportunity to nominate Penny Marshall, who would have become the first American woman ever nominated for directing a film, and it would have been a natural choice, but they didn't take it.
I don't think that the direction was anything special. I think obviously the Academy directors who do the nominating agreed, and I was sort of pleased that it didn't. I thought it would be second to Dances with Wolves overall, and so 3 is a real surprise.
One thing I want to ask you, talk about the fact that this movie was vaguely distasteful.
Reversal of Fortune.
Yes, I wonder if that didn't also work against Avalon, because here is a 3-generation movie about the family disintegrating, and it ends unhappily, and they don't live happily ever after. And if the movie had shown these people bonding together for 3 generations, would it have done better?
I think that's a very good point. You know, if you had to pick a theme that will get you Oscar nominations, and also I think get you box office, it's that you have that rooting interest in something that pays off. And those pictures, you're right, trend down.
And so people don't vote for them. When we come back, one of the biggest Oscar surprises this year was in the Best Actor category.
Fathers, 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 father. Dug that soil.
Prizes in the 63rd Annual Oscar nominations list. The next category is Best Actor. The nominees are Kevin Costner for Dances with Wolves, Robert De Niro for Awakenings, Gerard Depardieu for Cyrano de Bergerac, Richard Harris for The Field, Jeremy Irons for Reversal of Fortune. And the big surprise on the list is obviously the inclusion of Richard Harris, nominated for his role in The Field. He does a wonderful job playing an ogre, but I'm surprised that many actors found time to actually screen this little publicized film about a battle over a small patch of Irish farmland.
Well, you could be inviting a lot of trouble for yourself. Oh? From whom? This field is mine.
In addition to Harris getting congratulations, whoever was the PR agent for this film and sent out the cassettes to the various members of the Academy, their homes, they really deserve a lot of credit because this picture had not had much of a commercial release. Incidentally, The Field was also directed by Jim Sheridan, who directed last year's Best Actor winner, Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot.
You know, I don't want to really take anything away from Richard Harris's performance here. It is a good performance.
I think so.
In a movie that I think has a lot of problems, but I think you put your finger right on it, that sometimes the campaign for an actor really will pay off, and in the case of his campaign, that campaign ended in a nomination that was really against all the odds. So credit does go to the PR people.
And credit to him, too, because he is playing a bad guy who rules the town with an iron fist, and that can be an awfully boring one-note role and be overplayed. I bought him as a real character in there, and I think people should screen it for him.
It's a prize, but it's not really undeserved.
Not at all.
Okay, also in the Best Actor category, I was surprised that the voters selected Robert De Niro and not Robin Williams from Awakenings. As the psychiatrist who awakens De Niro from a trance of 30 years, Williams gave what I thought was the single best dramatic performance yet. But the voters chose De Niro, and I think I know why. Even though actors are nominated by actors, even professional actors, are as easily impressed as the public is by any performance that seems to come from the extremes of the human condition. If you want to get a nomination, wear a lot of makeup or play someone totally unlike yourself or 50 years older or another sex or with a mental illness, and you'll get the nod every time over somebody doing the equally difficult job of playing a realistic role. Look at Robin Williams here and the quiet subtlety of his performance.
What I believe, what I know, is these people are alive inside.
Another actor who might easily have been nominated was Ray Liotta, the lead in Goodfellas. He was brilliant in a long sequence showing his paranoia at the end of his mafia career.
The third time I've seen it, I went to the hospital, I started out to get you, I had to stop somewhere, make some couple stops. I've seen it every time. I've been all over town, and I think I've seen it all day.
And, of course, one other name that was conspicuously missing among the best actors was Paul Newman for Mr. and Mrs. Bridge. He was not nominated for Mr. Bridge, even though his wife, Joanne Woodward, was nominated for Mrs. Bridge. Newman has been nominated 7 times in the past, so maybe this isn't the end of the world for him, but I thought he really was the heart and soul of that movie.
I think it's a much bigger role and a much more important role to the success of that picture. But they're competing in 2 different categories, and we all know that there are so many more quality roles for men and so few good roles for women. So she makes it in the top 5, but he's competing against just so many more people, and that's a problem. That's why I think you have people sticking out. On Robin Williams, though, I want to completely differ with you. I thought that this was a mannered performance. He is playing somebody quite unlike himself. We all know that for sure. And I think I could see, as I said in my original review, the mannerisms of playing a controlled guy working there.
I thought that was fine. I enjoyed that. I think, though, on your other point about the men having more competition than the women, I think it's interesting that both Angelica Houston and Annette Bening were nominated for the Grifters, but that John Cusack, who had the lead in the film, was also overlooked. Not that the nominees were a bad list, but just that these other people could also... But maybe they should have...
But that explains
10 nominations in this category.
For the men and 5 for the women, because that would reflect, you know, a 2-to-1 ratio is about what it is now in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay, when we come back, a surprise in the Best Supporting Actress category.
No tone, my lipstick.
Oscar surprises to people we're surprised were not nominated, and others that were surprised were nominated. In the Best Supporting Actress category, the nominees are Annette Bening for The Grifters, Lorraine Bracco for Goodfellas, Whoopi Goldberg for Ghost, Diane Ladd for Wild at Heart, and Mary McDonnell for Dances with Wolves. And the surprise for me in this category was Diane Ladd, who was named for her work as a depraved mom in David Lynch's Wild at Heart. This was not a film I had very much respect for, but leaving that aside, Ladd's performance was mostly just lurid posturing. The way she was photographed, the things she was given to do, and the dialogue she had to say were equally painful to witness, and not even Hitchcock was ever as cruel to an actress, I think, as Lynch is in this film.
I want you to stop worrying about me and start worrying about how to get Lula away from that murderer.
Diane Ladd has done wonderful work before in movies like Chinatown and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and I think maybe this nomination came from the same impulse that I mentioned before when the voters confused the high-profile energy of bizarre characters with good acting.
I completely disagree. I thought that when I saw Diane Ladd in this performance, and I was glad she was nominated, I think she deserves it, I saw a joyously perverse performance. And, you know, this is the second time now that you've come down on David Lynch for misusing actresses. You went after Isabella Rossellini in Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
And now Diane Ladd. I want you to know that these are just performances. He's not being cruel to them. They're enjoying it. She did a great job. She took out ads to promote herself, and I think she's proud of the performance.
I'm happy for her, you know, and I'm glad she got nominated, but
touches your button somehow.
I think that's probably right, because I must confess that I really had a real antipathy toward this film. I just like the film. I just like the people in the film. I just like the way the people in the film were portrayed, and so therefore I don't think she should be nominated. Maybe it's a bias, you know. We're not talking about nuclear science here. We're talking about opinion.
Okay, and the actors differ with you, and so do I. I think that it was really, really good, and it wasn't cartoony. It was theatrical, but really well done. There were a number of surprising omissions in this category for me, too, including some very, very big names. I really admired Shirley MacLaine's work as the overbearing mother in Postcards from the Edge. The role is widely assumed to be based on Debbie Reynolds. Could it be that many nominating actors who are friends of Reynolds thought the portrait was too cruel? Also not nominated, Glenn Close for her role as the victimized Sonny Von Bulow in Reversal of Fortune. The film was unconventionally directed by Barbara Schroeder, so that she was off-screen much of the time and did a lot of voiceover narration. The net effect, to render her invisible. And so Close's striking performance was unfairly forgotten. And Winona Ryder, the Teenage Actress of the Year, was not nominated for any of her roles, including Mermaids, in which she more than held her own opposite Cher, playing her feisty daughter. 3 big roles for Ryder last year, Edward Scissorhands and Welcome Home Roxy Carmichael as well. I wasn't a big fan of Mermaids, but I sure did like her work in that picture. She could have gotten one.
You know, I don't think you're right that Shirley MacLaine didn't get nominated because Debbie Reynolds has so many friends out there, because after all, the movie is based on a book by her daughter, Carrie Fisher, who is equally successful and popular. I don't think that was really it. Maybe they
Can you explain why then? I cannot think of any reason.
If I could read 5,000 minds, I probably wouldn't have to be doing this show. I could probably go into the stock market. But the other nomination, Glenn Close, is interesting because she is a real favorite of the voters. She is nominated year after year, and this year they had 2 choices because a lot of people really liked her as Hamlet's mother in Hamlet. So that would have been another possible nomination in the supporting category, and she didn't get it for either But you know, I
think my explanation is right on that one. There was such a brilliant directing job by Schroeder, and as a result, he took her out. Another director had her on camera more, and had made the story more about her and all that, and he did.
The fact that he had the movie narrated by Sonny Von Bulow is the only reason the movie worked, because if she were dead and silent, then the whole thing would have been unutterably depressing. But the fact that she has her angle on it too, that she is a witness to the events, is a brilliant masterstroke. I agree with you.
Coming up next, the surprises in the Best Supporting Actor category.
You there!
Surprises. The nominees for Best Supporting Actor are Bruce Davison in Longtime Companion, Andy Garcia in The Godfather Part 3, Graham Greene in Dances with Wolves, Al Pacino in Dick Tracy, and Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. And the biggest surprise for me would be the inclusion of Graham Greene from Dances with Wolves. I know it's the most popular film of the Oscar race, and he did wonderful work in a strong role. I just thought it might be hard for the Oscar voters to remember whom he played, the inspirational kicking bird.
Tonka. Tonka. The Tonka.
Greene is a full-blooded Oneida Indian born in Canada, but he is no stranger to acting, having worked on the Toronto stage and in Canadian television and in such movies as Revolution, Pow Wow Highway, and Running Brave. That nomination, deserved as it is, surprised me.
It didn't surprise me. In fact, I had it on my list of Oscar favorites because I thought that since Dances with Wolves was going to get the most nominations, which was a given, then they would have to nominate one of the Indians that this character meets, and probably the one with the screen time. So I was not at all surprised.
I thought that they might go for the romance and just nominate Mary McDonnell, which they did, and I thought they might have forgotten him. We dump on these Academy voters all the time. Here was a good choice.
They did a good choice. It's good acting by Graham Greene. I want to see him in some more movies, and I'm sure I will. All 5 of the nominations in this category I thought were good performances. I'm especially glad the voters remembered Bruce Davison's work in Longtime Companion, which came out way last February, a year ago, and we talk about what a short attention span they have, but they remembered that performance.
Yep.
I can't complain about who was included in the category, but I can still mention 2 wonderful supporting performances that were not included. One of them was by Armando Santi in Q&A, where he played a drug dealer with an unusual philosophical side.
We used to call ourselves the sinners then. We were pretty tough. We rumbled, you know.
Another supporting performance the voters might have considered was by Hector Elizondo, who had some of the most entertaining scenes in Pretty Woman as the broad-minded manager of the hotel where the romance took place.
Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Thompson, I'm the manager of the hotel, sir.
For me, one of the real pleasures of Pretty Woman was the fact that every time they went through the lobby, they had to walk past that guy, and he always had another great line to say. So
Terrific.
things like that are supporting performances, too. And without them, movies would have a much less rich texture.
Well, I mean, you know, he's doing a better job than the lines that were written. That's a real key thing. And Armando Santi, really is one of the best performances of the year. Forget supporting, forget lead. He just did a great job.
Yes,
I'm sure he's going to get a lot of work off of that.
I hope so. He's been around 20 years and a lot of good work, and this one it blew me away.
Terrific.
When we come back, we'll discuss some intriguing aspects of this year's Oscar ad campaigns and also the surprises in the Best Actress category.
You're late.
Surprises in the Oscar nominations. In the Best Actress category, the nominees are Kathy Bates in Misery, Angelica Houston in The Grifters, Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, Meryl Streep in Postcards from the Edge, her 9th nomination, and Joanne Woodward for Mr. and Mrs. Bridge. Now, there weren't really any surprises on this list, but there are a couple of good performances that could well have been nominated. I already mentioned that Whoopi Goldberg did much more interesting work in a film called The Long Walk Home than in her supporting performance in Ghost. Another wonderful performance in that same movie was by Sissy Spacek as a white housewife at the time of the 1955 Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott, who offers to drive her maid, played by Goldberg, to and from work, and discovers in the process some things she'd never really thought about before.
If I wrote you a check, it would be Norman's money. This is something I can do. This whole mess is just about riding the bus anyway.
That's what it is now.
Among the people that were nominated already, since the nominations were announced, I've been asked by several people, well, do you think Julia Roberts should have gotten the nomination? That was just a big box office hit. And my opinion is yes, because she was at the heart of that movie, and she did have something special. It wasn't just a pretty face. Another pretty face might not have been able to make that movie work.
There are lots of beautiful faces in Hollywood. That they don't have a shortage of, but this woman lit up the screen in a most remarkable way. I mean, we really saw the birth of a major star in that film, and she's the one that everyone is caring about in that picture. No, I thought she would get the nomination, and she absolutely deserves it. One final thought this year on the Oscar nominations list. Every year there are intense advertising campaigns for the awards, with the ads being taken out in the Hollywood trade papers by the studios, but sometimes for the actors themselves paying right out of their own pocket. Well, mixed results for those personal campaigns this year. Hector Elizondo's ad campaign was not successful in getting him nominated for a supporting actor nod in Pretty Woman, but Diane Ladd did help her cause by buying ads plugging her role in Wild at Heart. Also of interest to me on these ad campaigns, Diane Keaton